What's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning into the Local Crown podcast, where we're going to teach you how to wage war on your competition and earn your local crown, also known as the top spot on Google. Awesome, man. So I got to ask, you mentioned that you know all these incredible people. I mean, you said you can text Grant Cardone if you wanted to. So how are you building your network, and what does it take to get the attention of the Grant Cardones and the people like that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I tell you, this medium that you and I are on right now, I'm sure when we're done, we're going to trade our cell phone numbers, unless we already had them before. I forget, but so this platform and this medium of podcasting is such an amazing tool to use to network and create value for people. So like what you're doing for me is you're introducing me to your listeners, right? Which is great. And, you and I are going to build a rapport and probably stay in touch. And so, when you have something that you can offer to somebody like a Grant Cardone, they're interested. And what happened with Grant is my book. So my first book, Ask More, Get More. Whenever I went to the airport, I would see his books. I saw Sell or Be Sold. I think it was Sell or Be Sold. And then If You're Not First, You're Last. I would see those books. And then I would see those books right next to my book. And then I would also see, like Tony Robbins right next to my book. And when I'm walking through these airports, I would see my books, before Tony Robbins books. And so, and then there's another guy named Ryan Blair who wrote the book, Nothing to Lose, Everything to Gain, and also Rock Bottom to Rockstar. I reached out to Ryan. I haven't reached out to Tony, but I reached out to Ryan and I said, "Hey man, I read your book. Love to have you on my podcast." And now we've actually become pretty close friends. And it all started, really with the book. And so that's for me, like when Grant Cardone reached out to me with my first book, Ask More, Get More, he just loved the title. And he's like, "This is, interesting. Why don't you come on my show called Power Players?" This is back in 2015, before Grant was really he was big, but he's not as big as he is now. And so that's kind of how I got his attention. So as I've built up my own podcast called The Alden Report, I've had, like I said, amazing guests on. I've had Les Brown on. I've had Nolan Bushnell, the founder of Chuck E. Cheese and Atari, on. I've had Grant Cardone on, and Dean Graziosi, and Armando Montalongo, and Lewis Howes, and just, Ryan Blair, and just over and over again. But it took time to build up credibility in my podcast with all these other kind of rock star entrepreneurs. And so when you have that, already kind of in your, in your kind of toolbox, so to speak, it's great to show that social proof of, hey, these guys were on, you should come on too.
100%, man. I know that I interviewed Justin Saunders a while back, and he's known for helping people build up 6- and 7-figure marketing agencies. But one of the things that he told me was that he blew me off the first few times that I invited him on the show. And then I kept asking him, and finally he looked into me, and I had done enough with it. I had marketed myself hard enough that he finally said yes. So
that's it, man. I'll tell you one in particular that's going on literally right now with me. So Mel Robbins, you know who she is? She wrote the book called The 5-Second Rule.
Yes.
Okay. So, Mel, I'm in Massachusetts. Mel's in Massachusetts. She's also a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. We happened to meet on a flight to LA. We just happened to sit next to each other, and I didn't know who she was. Didn't know her from hole in the wall, and we just started talking. And I realized, what she did, and I didn't even know anything about her book, what made her kind of quote famous is she did a great TEDx speech, and her whole career kind of exploded from there. And, I asked her to be on my podcast. She said yes, but some team members shut it down. It's a couple of years ago, like three years ago. My podcast is, I think this is into my 6th year. So it wasn't as, I didn't have as many, people on the podcast to really kind of show her, who has been on and the quality of my guests. And quite frankly, I've reached out again, and, so you get no response. Right. And so just a couple of days ago, I sent another message to her, and I basically, pulled what they call it the Columbo close, which is I basically said, "Listen, I understand, you're busy, and I know that we couldn't connect the first time, and I haven't heard back from you, since. And by the way, here's the thing with that technique. We've actually communicated. It's not like she's never responded to me. Sometimes I'll get messages from people on LinkedIn and say, hey, you didn't get my message, or I'm just going to stop talking to you. Dude, I don't even know who the fuck you are, man. Like we haven't even talked to each other. So don't try and close me by giving me some sort of FOMO. Like, I don't know who you are. And, we have no rapport. So you want to just try and tell me that you're going to walk away. Cool. Walk away. Cause we don't know each other. But Mel and I have actually talked. And so I said, look, I understand you're busy. So it's been, a couple of years, 3 years now. So I like what you're doing. We're both from Mass, both lawyers. Would love to have you on, but maybe just, it wasn't for you, or it's not for you. And guess what? She responded. She didn't respond to my last 3 messages. She responded and said, you know what? I'm just waiting. I have another book coming out, and I'm waiting to book on my podcast. So I will eventually have her on the podcast, but it's just that persistence too, right? Like what you were saying with Saunders, you just keep asking. And if you keep getting no's, like, what's the downside? You know what I mean? Like, what are you going to do? Offend somebody? You're going to offend, like, Jim, the book Good to Great. Good to Great by Jim Collins. It's an amazing book. And I was writing my book 5% More, and I was also reading his book. My book was almost done, and I read this great story in there about this athlete. And because I talk a lot about athletes and how athletes' lives are changed by like a fraction of a second, right? Because it's that little extra tiny little effort. And he talks about some athletes in his book, and I was like, wow, I want to put that story in my book. So I did, but I reached out to Jim Collins. I mean, he's huge as far as, authors and great books. And over and over and over again, he has said no, but he actually hand wrote a note, sent it to me, still saying no. Right. But it was actually pretty cool that he actually took the time to handwrite the note, because he doesn't need to come on my podcast. And maybe someday when his book comes out, maybe he will say, you know what? Yeah, let's do it. I'll have you on. But yeah, like, what's the worst that's going to happen? Who cares? Like, just keep asking.
100%, man. There's a huge amount of power in that. And like you said, people have this fear of being annoying with stuff like that, but it's not like you're being annoying trying to reach out and sell them something in this scenario. You're reaching out and saying, hey, I respect you, and I know you're busy, so I'm just going to keep following up until you see it.
Yeah. It's like, that's it, man. And that's the, one of the keys, to quote success is consistency, persistence, and there's a delicate balance of being like annoying and persistent, and like, for instance, like, with your podcast, with my podcast, or others, so let's walk through it. So Justin Saunders doesn't know you. I don't know who he is, but he doesn't know you, and you're reaching out to him. You like him, you see what he's doing. He's done some great stuff. You want to have him on as a guest. What is it going to do, right? So it's going to do 2 things. It's going to add value to you and to him, because you're going to create some cool content that he can then repurpose, right? And usually it's, this term evergreen, meaning it can be used forever. And so there's no cost to him. Like, what's the downside? The downside is what, maybe a half an hour of time that, that he has to kind of set aside. But either way, I mean, it's valuable to him. It's valuable to me. It's valuable to you on both sides. So you're adding value to him, and he's adding value to you at the same time. So it's it's truly like a win-win scenario. It's just a matter of, whether or not they want to book the time, to get you on. And when you have someone like super famous, like Gary Vee knows that, I almost booked him on my podcast. But it came down to, he wanted to get paid, because I don't know Gary Vee, right? And I almost paid, it was $10,000 for 15 minutes. And I was like, man, does that make sense for me? And the answer was no. Like, I like Gary Vee, but not that much. If at some point, he'll come on my podcast, and I'm not going to pay for it, so you'll get to the point where you might find that there's just there's a roadblock that just doesn't make sense for you. And then you just move on to the next one. So yeah, I mean, the persistence is key.
Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you learned something. If you have questions, email us at info@thelocalcrown.com. And if you want to get featured in our publication, Inside the Empire, alongside John Lee Dumas, the entrepreneur on fire, Jayson Waller, the CEO of Power Home Solar, Sharon Lechter, Dan Caldwell, the man that started Tap Out, and the limitless man himself, Kwik, for free, then head over to thelocalcrown.com/become a contributor.